Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're taking a really fascinating dive into the financial structure of Portland's biggest venue. Drawing directly from our source material, we're going to unpack the arguments and the data behind how the Moda Center operates. We're pulling back the curtain on the mechanics of arena deals, looking at exactly who pays for what, and how all that revenue actually flows.
Just picture this, the Moda Center glowing brightly against the night sky. Thousands of people streaming in for a big game or a massive concert. This isn't just a concrete box. It's literally Oregon's biggest year-round stage. It's the beating heart of the city's entertainment. But beyond the bright lights and the cheering crowds, there's a highly complex financial engine running this entire operation.
But here's a wild question for you. Did you know you actually own this building? Seriously, if you live in Portland, this isn't just a figure of speech. The city of Portland, meaning the taxpayers, actually holds the title to the Moda Center. Every major event that happens here takes place inside a publicly owned asset. And because the city, the county, and the state are currently figuring out how to fund a massive renovation for this building, understanding how this ownership actually works is more crucial now than ever.
Okay, let's dive right into this structure. Understanding the deal really just requires breaking it down into 4 simple steps. First, the 3 arena layers. Second, mapping the revenue streams. Third, the renovation proposal. And finally, fourth, what actually makes a fair deal.
Step 1, the 3 arena layers: owner, operator, and tenant.
To really grasp how an arena functions, I want you to imagine a 3-story building. Pretty much every single arena in America works on an architectural metaphor just like this. Up on the top floor, you have the owner, the entity holding the title and the ultimate responsibility for the asset. In this case, that's the city of Portland. The city owns the Moda Center, alongside the Veterans Memorial Coliseum and the Rose Quarter parking garages. And this ownership matters immensely, because when a 30-year-old building needs major repairs, that multi-million-dollar bill naturally lands right on the owner's desk.
Now moving down to the middle floor, we've got the operator. The operator is the entity that runs the calendar, maintains the facility, and most importantly, collects the revenue. For the Moda Center, the operator is Rip City Management. They're a private company affiliated with the Trailblazers, whose majority owner is a group led by Tom Dundon. Our source material notes that operating an arena is a highly legitimate, incredibly valuable business right. They hold the exclusive right to run a publicly owned building.
You see, arena operation is a highly competitive, lucrative industry. It's dominated by major players like Oakview Group, ASM Global, AEG, and Live Nation. Private operators routinely pay hundreds of millions, sometimes even $1 billion, for the privilege of running city-owned arenas in places like Seattle, Austin, and Baltimore. So the right to operate the Moda Center carries massive market value.
And finally, down on the ground floor, we have the tenants. These are the entities that actually rent out the arena for their events. Now, the Trailblazers are obviously the anchor tenant here, but they share the stage. You've got the newly formed Portland Fire of the WNBA, who are independently owned. You have the Winterhawks hockey team. Plus, you have massive national concert promoters, family shows, and graduations.
Now, this detail is absolutely crucial. Blazers games, they actually only make up about 25% of the roughly 200 event nights hosted at the Moda Center every year. The other 75%, that's your concerts, your comedy shows, all the other events. In fact, our source notes that these non-Blazers events actually generate more ticket user fee revenue for the city than the Blazers games do.
All right, step 2, mapping the revenue streams. We're just following the money here.
As we map this out, our source points to a golden rule of arena structures. In this setup, the money follows the operator, not the owner. Just think about who actually receives the revenue here. When fans buy Blazers tickets, well, that goes to the team. But what about the event rent from promoters? The facilities fees added to every single ticket? The food, the beer, the luxury suites? Even the naming rights that literally put the word Moda on the side of a building owned by the public? Almost every single dollar of that flows straight to the private operator and the team, which, remember, share an ownership group.
Now contrast that massive, overwhelming wave of private revenue with what the public owner gets in return. A modest $7 to $10 million a year. That's it. And that comes entirely from a small user fee charged on tickets, plus the net proceeds from the city's parking garages.
Step 3, the renovation proposal. Let's look at who pays for the upgrade.
So, the Moda Center is turning 30 years old, and pretty much everyone agrees the building needs investment. A great arena is fantastic for the team, the fans, the whole city. But the million-dollar, or rather billion-dollar question right now is, how should this renovation actually be funded? Let's break down the proposed public commitments because honestly, the numbers are staggering. The city of Portland has an announced commitment of $405 million. Multnomah County has identified roughly $101.6 million, and the state of Oregon is factoring in a contribution through Senate Bill 1501. When you add up all those public components and factor in the financing costs, the source analysis points out that the total public commitment approaches somewhere between $871 million and $1 billion.
But here is a really interesting structural detail straight from the city's own facility assessment. Only about 1/3, so 33% of the proposed work consists of necessary keep-the-building-safe repairs. The other 2/3, those are revenue-generating upgrades. We're talking premium clubs, hospitality spaces, brand new tech. Upgrades that exclusively generate revenue for the private operator.
To put an even finer point on it, the source analysis highlights that the specific capital plan required just to meet NBA standards is only about $80 million. Everything else above that is largely about enhancing the revenue-generating capability of the building.
Which brings us to step 4. What is a fair deal? Let's look at some market models. If 2/3 of $1 billion renovation generates revenue that stays completely private, how do other cities handle this math? Let's look at 2 standard models from across the industry. On the one hand, we have the Seattle model. The public owns the building, a private operator pays for the renovation and operates it, and the public shares in the upside. On the other hand, we have the San Francisco model. The private side pays for the building, the private side owns it outright, and the private side keeps what it earns. The Source campaign points out that both of these models make logical sense, right? Because they align who pays with who benefits.
Now contrast those logical market precedents with what's currently on the table in Portland. The public pays, but the private side keeps the revenue. According to the source materials analysis, this is just structurally inconsistent. The public is paying for the upgrades, but the private operator is collecting the financial rewards of those upgrades.
So, the Source campaign lays out 3 standard industry fixes to make this a fair deal. Step 1, a private capital match. Step 2, revenue participation, meaning the public actually shares in the earnings of the building it owns. And step 3, real relocation protection. And, it's definitely worth noting here that Tom Dundon, the leader of the Blazers ownership group, actually accepted very similar market terms, including rent and massive capital contributions for his hockey arena over in Raleigh.
Now, you might be wondering, why does all this matter right now? Well, the most important fact is that nothing is signed yet. Those state funds from SB 1501, they only flow after the city and county make binding commitments. On July 22nd, the City Council receives the final financial analysis, and a binding vote will follow shortly after that. So the window to structure a deal is open right this very minute.
And that really brings us to the core thesis of the Source campaign, which is summed up perfectly in this quote. The public funds what the public gets. Ownership funds what ownership keeps. They argue that a fair deal doesn't mean being anti-team or anti-renovation at all. It simply means aligning the funding with the financial rewards.
So what kind of deal do you want for your city's arena? I mean, it is your building after all, right? The campaign behind this data encourages citizens to go explore how 16 other NBA cities structured their deals at ripcity.notaripoff.com. Thanks so much for joining me to unpack these sources on The Explainer today, and remember, keep asking the right questions.